Hey there. So I just wanted to add to the discussion, and I wanted to kind of provide some kind of perspective on the question, why don't they leave us alone?
In today's video, we'll listen to a psychologist answer a question that most, if not all of us ask by the time we reach adulthood. Why are they so obsessed with us? We've lived in this country with them for centuries. Will they ever leave us alone? Let's take a look at what the psychologist has to say about this.
Hey there. So I just wanted to add to the discussion, and I wanted to kind of provide some kind of perspective on the question, why don't they leave us alone? Okay, so I want to come at it from a psychological perspective. And for those of you who know me, my name is Jamila and I am a psychologist. So I want to talk about three terms: internal locus of control, external locus of control, and projection. Okay, so internal locus of control is a personality state that basically says, I'm in control of my own destiny. I am responsible for where I go in life. I make the decisions for whatever it is that's going to happen next. Not only does internal locus of control manage your behavior or your choices, it also manages your perspective. So even if something that's outside of your control happens, a person with a personality trait of internal locus of control, they will do the actions to make the corrections to restabilize their lives. So a person with internal locus of control has an internal sense of responsibility in managing their own lives. Okay, now, by contrast, someone with an external locus of control relies on the environment to dictate the direction of their lives. Whether the environment is represented by other people, other situations, circumstances, what have you, but they are not internally driven, they are externally driven. So even if they have a concept of, well, I'd like to have this type of job, they are relying on others to do the job application, others to supply the job, others to show up for the interview. Do you see what I'm saying? So it is a reliance on the other in order to establish self-identity. So internal locus of control allows you to establish your own self-identity based on your actions and your perceptions. External locus of control, also a personality trait, requires external circumstances and external sources in order to determine self-identity. So how does this relate to our current situation? And I'm going to define projection in a little bit. How does this relate to our current situation? All right. So one of the interesting things about propaganda this propaganda, it requires comparative statements. In order to be supreme, you have to have something that's inferior, subordinate, submissive, and powerless. In order to be better, you have to have something that's worse. In order to be smarter, you have to have something that's not so smart. So everything is based on a comparative statement. Without the comparative statement, you just exist. And for whatever reason, that's not enough. Now, the problem with living on comparative statements or basing your identity on comparative statements is it requires you to stay in a state of external locus of control, meaning that the comparative statements are only valid if the environment or the other people buy into the comparison. So if I want to call myself supreme, that means that the environment has to consider itself to be inferior, not just me. Not just me. The environment also has to consider itself to be inferior, submissive, subordinate in order to reinforce me feeling supreme so that my identity is established. Now, when we think about Black people, do the words submissive, subordinate, and subservient come to mind? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There is nothing in the behavior, there's nothing in the expression, there's nothing in the audacity that would suggest any of those adjectives. And so if you don't have a subordinate, you don't have a submissive, you don't have a subservient, how do you have a supreme? The comparison can't be made. Now that's a problem, because if my self-identity is based on external factors and external locus of control, I'm not content with me being me by myself. The environment also has to provide for my identity. And if the environment is not lining up with what I need, then I don't have my self-identity. I cannot turn within myself and generate my own identity because I was not taught that. I was taught to view myself through the comparative statement. I was taught to view myself by viewing others, looking at the others, determining them to be inferior in order for me to feel superior. That's what I was taught. I was never taught to feel good about myself just by myself. And then, of course, it doesn't help that systems and structures are put into place to reinforce this external locus of control. Now, while that's happening, the people who are being oppressed, or the people who are the attempts to force the other to participate in the comparison, drives the development of an internal locus of control in order to combat what would otherwise look like a hopeless situation. And that's where we get the term resilience, the development of an internal locus of control. The idea that I can do something, that I am worth something, that I have something that can combat this external situation that otherwise would be hopeless if I didn't have that internal locus of control. It creates resilience, which has been demonstrated, right? And now we create a positive cycle. Resilience reinforces internal locus of control. Internal locus of control reinforces resilience. And when you're engaged in resilience, do you know what you're not engaged in? Comparison. You're too busy managing your own situation to worry about comparing yourself to other people and whether or not you measure up to whatever it is that they think. But the ones who rely on an external locus of control, the one who's relying on the other to create their identity, they have a problem with resilience. We don't want you to be resilient. We want you to feed my self-identity. I am someone who has been taught external locus of control. My identity isn't complete until you feed into it. And you being resilient doesn't feed into my identity. So that's a problem. Now, let's talk about the term projection. Projection is essentially when you assume that other people's needs are the same as yours, that other people's thoughts are the same as yours, that other people's motivations are the same as yours. Now, when you are a person who has been developed in the external locus of control, if your personality is built with the idea of an external locus of control, then projection would say that other people also have an external locus of control. So what does that look like? That looks like me trying to tell you who you are. Just like I need you to inform me for who I am, I assume that you need me to tell you who you are. And so if I want to be supreme, then I'm going to impose upon you standards, definitions, insults, slurs, whatever it is that is necessary to make you inferior, submissive, subordinate, and subservient. Because I need you to be that in order for me to be supreme. I need you to buy into that in order for me to be supreme. I operate with external locus of control, and I am projecting onto you the assumption that you operate with external locus of control. So I'm going to project these negative things onto you so that you can be the inferior in order for me to be the supreme. But of course, the problem is when you're operating with an internal locus of control and someone comes along and they try to tell you who you are, you just say, no, I don't believe that. I'm just going to keep being me. And that's why they can't leave us alone. There's that constant need, the projection, that we need external locus of control like they need the external locus of control, or we have external locus of control like they have external locus of control. So they're always going to come after us because they need their identity formed and reassured. That's just the psychology of it.